All right, welcome to the latest episode of the Colman Power Organic Fitness Podcast. This is a show like no other. I have the guest, Judy Maloney, most certainly a psychotherapist working out of Zen. Judy, say hello to the listeners.
Hello, listeners, and hello, Colman. How are you doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. We just had a little chat there before we started, and we're lucky to have teeth and most certainly our heads screwed on before we go into this podcast between the two of us. And I brought you on, I suppose, Judy, in relation to, I suppose, psychotherapist being something that people most certainly do go to, and when times they are certainly struggling. And I wanted you to tell the listeners and the viewers a little bit about what you do and where you're based.
Okay, so what I do, I suppose, how I'd work it, or how I'd explain it is, I work with people. I'm not the expert. I am not the guru. I don't have all of the answers. It's really about building relationships with people and helping them find the answers to whatever they're struggling with, whatever's going on for them. Because I do believe ultimately we all have this, we all have what we need to heal ourselves. It's all in there. We mightn't consciously know it, but our bodies know it. We're wise enough to know it. So it's kind of allowing a space for that. It's creating the space for people to explore if they're going through something, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's addiction. We can put all these labels on it. But I think what ultimately it is, it's disconnection. When people become disconnected from themselves or disconnected from others or relationships, that's when things go askew in people's lives. That's when relationships break down. That's when all unhealthy habits come into place. You stop looking after yourself and make bad decisions, bad choices. Life goes a bit upside down, and that's when people come to me. So this is what I mean. I'm not the expert. I don't have the answers for anyone, but I provide the space, that safe space for them to explore it with me, and it's kind of that problem solving. So where I operate from, I'm operating from Limerick. I'm from Limerick all my life. I've worked through loads of different organizations. I've worked in Pieta House, and I've worked in with families of prisoners, and I've worked in UL in the counselling department. I've a good range of, I suppose, background and experience. It's all quite diverse. But where I'm working at the moment, it's our shop in Zen. Myself and my partner set it up last year. So he's on the kind of herbalist side, but maybe a little bit more on your turf, Colman, without a doubt, I would say. And then I'm a little bit more in the mental health, because this is what I found. For years, I'm working in the health industry for about 15 years, and it's all segregated. That's my, experience of it. There's huge gaps. People come to me and they're talking about the mental health. And then I ask them questions maybe about the physical health, how they're doing, what are they eating, what are they sleeping like, what medication are they on. And I'm not trained in any of that, but obviously you're entire, aren't you? You're the whole being of you. And it's almost like, oh well, that's separate, that's irrelevant. And they're going somewhere to the doctor for this, or they're going to, for spirituality, they go to their church or their whatever it is. It's like trying to put it all together, because for me that's holistic. That's whole health. It's your mental health, your emotional health, physical health, spiritual health.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hope that answers your
as you
question.
touched on there, you see, everything is connected, and the foods,
Yeah.
and most certainly the mind, touching on that point in relation to the likes of your vagus nerve, connection between your stomach and the likes of your brain.
Yeah.
With clients that you currently work with, what is people's most, I suppose, one of the common things that you often deal with?
Oh, I'd have to say anxiety. It's genuinely number one across the board. It is anxiety. And of course, it comes in all different shapes and forms for different people. And a lot of the time, to be honest, people walking in the door, they're not necessarily presenting with anxiety. They're not saying to me, Judy, I'm anxious. They could be saying, I feel a bit burnt out. I'm feeling too busy. I feel, whatever it is, they're just touching on different things, or the relationship isn't going right, or I'm really, I'm losing my cool around the kids, or whatever it is. But underneath it all is anxiety. They just don't even realize it. We are, geez, as a species, we're going around like wired to the moon, and we don't really need to be. This is a lot more in our control than we realize. So it's just like basic stuff, grounding techniques, bringing them back down, walk in your bare feet, go hug a tree. I say to people all the time, they think I'm completely nuts, and I get it. But it's that connecting back with nature, because we've become so disconnected. So anxiety, that's definitely without a doubt. And like a lot of people are on SSRIs, are on medication, and I'm not an advocate for or against. I think there is a place for everything at different times, but I think a lot of people are just going on medication first. You know, and I think there are other healthier ways, that because then you see the effect that people have sometimes when they try and come off medication. So it's just, you know, try, you know, it's about, again, education. I think that's a lot of it, just educating people. Okay, well, if you are anxious, first of all, what's going on? Is it anxiety? And if it is, okay, well then how can you bring your nervous system, calm it down a little bit?
Yeah,
You know, simple stuff.
Judy, I want you to most certainly maybe expand a little bit just on either new listeners or listeners that you must be bringing in off your sending the likes of this podcast to people that you currently know. Grounding, okay, it's something that I would regularly do, but just I suppose touch on that point for me.
Well, I suppose ultimately what's happening is, you know, when we go back, and not to get into the whole science of it by any means, and that's again not my field, I touch on it, I have a knowledge of it, I know when it doesn't work, I suppose. That's what I have every day, people coming into me. But it's looking at us in terms of our beings, right? We've evolved so much. So we are very, how do I put it? It's been out of my head now, it's been a long day. But we, you know, we adapt, right? We're very good at adapting. Absolutely. That's why we've evolved as far as we have. However, each time we adapt so far out of our natural state, it causes it's a cost to us, basically. So we'll adapt for survival, but there's a cost on another side. So what's happening is we're expecting so much of ourselves all the time. We're putting ourselves into high stress and high anxiety, and that can be, you know, getting up in the morning to an alarm clock on your mobile phone. It can start with that. Going to, I need to get the kids ready for this, or oh, I have to get ready to record a podcast, or I have to post something up on social media, or I have to be in work by whatever, and emails are coming in or whatever. So it could be just your normal everyday stuff, but the anxiety and the stress that causes on our bodies, it's like, where's the rest time? I hear it all the time, people saying, oh, do nothing. It's just doing nothing. It's like we're programmed into thinking we have to be productive all the time. So grounding, really, it's pausing. Ultimately, that's what it is. It's pressing pause, connecting back with your body instead of like a floating brain going around the place, which is what a lot of us are. We have the mind, the busy mind, totally disconnected from the body, you know, and then you're using drugs, you're using drink, you're using sex, you're using whatever it is to feel something in the moment or not feel. So it's about coming into your body, not being afraid of it, coming back to your own rhythm, allowing your body to rest, all of those hormones dropping down, the stress hormones, you know, so that we can start to rest and recuperate and recover. And then the next thing comes and we'll go. And that's okay. Stress is okay. It is a part of life. You know, you can't avoid, like, yeah, you're going to have to, at this point, go up the mountains and meditate to avoid stress altogether. You know, you're at this point, it's really, really hard not to have stress, but it is about managing it and limiting it as much as you possibly can. And willing to make the changes. I think that's it. A lot of people aren't willing to do what it takes.
Yeah, they really have to, I suppose, get clear on where they are and where they would like to be is something that I often say to people that I would meet, mentor or coach. But yeah, this is something I suppose that I would even suffer with. It's actually slowing down because we live in a world that we're actually racing around from phone to the next person to the next meeting to the next task. And we're actually in search for a dopamine hit. Because every time
Yeah.
that we put up a photo on Facebook or Instagram or on TikTok or wherever we put it, the point is we're hoping and we're looking for a like, a notification, a tap on the back, a wink face, a kiss, a love heart. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, that validation all the time. It's that escaping from our current state. Because when you are currently stressed or anxious or fearful or worried or angry or whatever, those little external validations are lovely. Oh, nice, nice, nice. They don't last. You know, it's not real, because what happens is you start chasing the next one again. And that's the big, you know, people are really, there's a lot of fear there. And look, I know people talk about it all the time, but I'm seeing it so much now after all the lockdowns that the anxiety is so high. The fear is really, really high because people don't know what to do. Whatever they did before isn't working. And I think ultimately it's a positive thing. People are forced into making healthier choices. But I think in the moment where it is now, it's a lot of upheaval, a lot of unknown. And as humans, we don't like change. We do it, but we don't like it. You know, we do it out of necessity. But that's what happens. People kind of hit their, not necessarily rock bottom, but hit a bit of a crisis, and then they'll work on themselves, as opposed to just doing it because out of self-love, out of self-care. If you don't love yourself, maybe like yourself. Maybe just care for yourself. You know?
That's such a good point. The point is you're looking for an improvement. And what were the words you just said there? I'm going to write it down. You don't have to love yourself, just like yourself. Is that what you said?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, even if you don't like yourself, start with being grateful, have gratitude. Okay, I have legs. I'm grateful I have legs and they work and they got me to work today. I'm grateful I have eyes, I can see, you know, what down to the basics. If you're struggling, so if anyone out there is that's listening and struggling with that kind of self-love, just acknowledge what you have. I'm grateful for my arms because they're strong. I can hold my baby or I can lift this, whatever it is. Start with that. Work your way up then to caring for yourself. Then maybe you might shift into liking yourself a bit. At some point, it could maybe move into love, you know, but it's all on the same kind of spectrum, really, isn't it?
Yeah, most certainly. And doing things that bring you happiness, whether it's exercising. I would be a firm believer in most certainly getting outside. Like I said, the sun is one of the things that literally is a natural mood improver. We're coming into spring and then what follows spring, summer. And for the people that say that the sun is dangerous, it's more so it's dangerous in the dose. Getting morning sunlight, again, is something that does, again, increase the stress hormone. But that's something that's natural and should be encouraged to people to get in the morning, because that's going to help them most certainly improve their circadian rhythm, which helps them with their sleep. When you improve your sleep, you're reducing anxiety, and that's one of the reasons why I'm in this quite dark room with candlelights left and right here, not just to be romantic, as I was telling you before we started the podcast.
But it is, you're right, it's back to basics. You know, as you were saying before about it being extreme, I think it's the opposite. It's going back to what we our natural being. You know, we can falsify ourselves so much. You can get nice, you know, if you're looking for Botox or you get veneers or you dye your hair or you have a nice house or whatever it is, you have all these external things. That's all great. But at the end of the day, you are still a human being. There's no getting away from that. We have not come up with that yet, where, you know, we can kind of avoid all of these things that naturally we really, really need. We need to be connected to the earth. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how progressed you are or not, or financial means, nothing like that comes into it. We're all human beings. That's the equality in it. That's the, I suppose, the connection point to us all.
Yeah.
So it's coming back to source, really, without sounding totally completely airy fairy like. But
no, because this is a podcast where people will be very similar, like-minded to me and you. And then touching on that point, all right, connections are words you've used, and that's really important because connection, whether it's family members, it's work colleagues, and or groups or associations that you're in, are key for health. Whatever current thing that you like, most certainly joining a group is one of the things that I highly recommend, whether it's a fitness group, whether it's a yoga, whether it's Pilates, whether it's a retreat that inevitably you make friends at. And that quote that comes to mind is, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We're social beings, we thrive off each other, you know, and it's a psychological need, that need to belong, the need for love, connection, and belonging. It's not a want or an extra desire, or, you know, well, you're lucky if you have it. It is a need, you know, and not just throwing away this comment, but people do die from that lack of connection and that loneliness when they're completely isolated. Because we know, it's just like, okay, what is the point in this? There's that deep inner knowing within us that we need that connection, that is the part of us that keeps us alive, keeps us thriving, keeps us growing, that it's not just about us. You know, we're just part of the whole lot. So when I talk about connection, the first thing that I would, you know, I suppose encourage my clients to look at is, okay, how can you start to connect with yourself? What might that be? And often, really, it's about looking at, okay, well, what did you like as a child when you were a kid? Because, you know, if I ask that question, like, well, how can you connect with yourself? Usually people's like, well, I don't know, like, or go for a bath, or, you know, they'll throw out kind of random stuff they might do. But it's like, okay, well, what's the kind of stuff that you love to do when you were a kid? Feeds your soul. And it's getting back to that stuff, because when we're kids, we instinctively know what makes us feel better. If your parents are roaring and shouting in the house, or if there's hassle going on at school, or you're being bullied, or there was a death in the family, or whatever chaos might be going on around you. A child, if you watch, will go and they'll do whatever it is that they need to do to emotionally regulate. For some kids, that's reading on their own. For some, it might be drawing. For some, it's singing. For some, it's going into their whole imagination. Others, it could be like riding a bike, doing something physical. It's that if you're ever stuck on what is it, what I'm missing something, I'm just not feeling connected. Go back to what was the kind of stuff that I loved to do as a kid, and get a bike, get roller skates, do whatever. Do you know what I mean? Go back to that, because that's it. We know this stuff instinctively. We just forget it, but also we're told, don't be doing that, it's stupid. Don't be doing that, it's childish. What are you doing going around your bare feet? Or what do you do? You know, the judgment and the criticism and all that comes into play. And then we become so far apart from our authentic selves.
Isn't there that? I'm sure it's a fact. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head now, that as a child you laugh, I'm going to say over 100 times a day, or maybe it's 100 times a week. But
I
as we
don't
get
know.
older, we stop laughing, we stop enjoying
I
ourselves,
know.
and we're going towards working, and realize that a work takes up a huge part of your life, making sure that you're in a job that you do enjoy, or at least some part of it that you most certainly do like, because if
I
you
know.
don't, otherwise you're going down a road where you're just rolling out of bed. In fact, some people
I
find it
know.
very difficult to get up out of bed in the morning because they don't enjoy any part of their current work, inclusive of their colleagues, their tasks that they have to carry out.
Yeah. Yeah, because I suppose like that, it comes a stage after years of this kind of disconnecting, becoming a version of yourself. People don't know themselves, so they don't know. And I think that's what's happening. That's what I'm seeing more so coming into the clinic since the lockdowns. It's because I would say since COVID, but it's not since COVID, it's since the lockdowns. It's that isolation really more than COVID in a sense, right? I see people now kind of disillusioned. This, as I said, the stuff they did before, it's not working anymore. So it's all that, oh my God, I don't even like this. I've done this every Friday night for 10 years, or, you know, or they're a certain group of friends, or they do something or some activity, and they're starting to realize, Jesus, I don't even like this. I'm not getting the same thing out of it, because maybe they just did it for so long, they believed they like it. And now they're going, actually, I don't know if I do or not. So while it's really scary, it's like coming back to source in terms of your own self, be, you know, connecting back in like that. And it's not easy. That's not an easy journey. But like anything, you know yourself, once you know it, you can't unknow it anymore. Like,
Yeah. And I was actually speaking to someone previously, before we recorded this podcast, and it was touching on the point that just because you've previously done something for a numerous number of years and hung out with a certain amount of friends doesn't mean you have to continue to do that. Because as
yeah.
we age, right, so a lot of us are getting sick of the Friday night, the Saturday night, drinking and continuously doing that. Firstly, drink is another reason to linked with poor gut health, which is linked with depression and anxiety, killing those
Mhm.
beneficial gut bacteria. But just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. Because if you were to switch up the cards or the deck and say, right, I actually don't want to go out on the Friday night, or go
Mhm.
over and call over and have that bottle of wine, or half of it, or whatever that may be. Do you actually want to get up in the morning and go for a walk and a hike, or wherever you're currently
Mhm.
living? Would they as quick say yes, or would they as quick say no? The thing is, if you
Yeah.
don't enjoy doing those things, switch up to doing more things that you do.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's just about coming out of the child place where we feel, oh, we have to do those things, you know. And it's okay if people don't agree with that, if people think you're even a bit odd, and particularly around drink in Ireland, you know, we're very attached to it. There's something wrong with you if you don't drink, or you're pregnant, or you're on antibiotics, or you've had a drinking problem. Do you know? Whereas really, you know, it's the opposite. You know, it's a drug at the end of the day. It's just so culturally ingrained, but that's a totally other podcast. I know that there's so much there, but like it is about kind of being okay with people not agreeing with you. That's all right. We're adults. We all like different things, and that's okay. At the end of the day, when you close your door and you go home to whoever it is behind the door, that's all that matters. And all those other people who have the judgments or have the, you know, the remarks or opinions, well, they don't pay your bills either. They don't actually have your responsibilities. You know, it's about, you know, minding your own stuff. That's so important. And then you become a better version of you because it's a truer version of you. You're not putting on that mask. And we do have to put on masks at the time, of course we do. But I think with masks, don't have it so far away from your own real truth. You know, that's the difference.
Yeah, no, and you're great to bring up those points, I suppose. And just conscious of your own time, Judy, if you would maybe let the listeners and the viewers know where's the best place for them to either contact you and or maybe work with you in the near future.
Yeah, brilliant. So if you just go on, look, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, all those things. If you look at judymoloney.com, that's my website. If you want to check out Raisin, where we do herbal treatments and therapies and all that, it's raisin.ie. So RAISEZEN. So again, Instagram or websites.
Perfect. Judy, thanks so much for coming on to the likes of the show. And I love ending these podcasts by saying stay tuned, stay classy, and keep it organic.